The news settled over Westminster, like a low summer haze, and from the moment it did, every corridor conversation, in Whitehall, every lunchtime exchange, in the city, and every print room inside a Midlands factory, seemed to circle back to one question: what will a Wales warrant really mean? For generations the Royal Arms have operated as the quiet motor of British prestige, a revolving set of heraldic panels bolted to iron gates in Yorkshire farmyards, etched onto the lids of Bond Street perfume boxes, stitched into the leather tags that dangle from rain-battered wax jackets seen on television, in half-second flashes, yet understood everywhere as a single promise: this product, this service, has entered the palace itself, and been judged worthy. That promise did not arrive by accident. Its roots burrow deep into medieval household ledgers, when sovereigns kept tallies of which cheesemonger or cloth merchant brought reliable fare through the postern gate. Henry VIII turned that ledger into something approaching policy by issuing parchment scrolls in his own hand, and from there the custom grew into a fully codified system under George IV and Victoria, who realized that industrial Britain could outcompete the continent if buyers in Boston, Calcutta, and Buenos Aires believed that the Crown had stamped certain British names with unique authority. 2 centuries later the system endures, but the ground beneath it has shifted seismically. Shoppers now weigh carbon impact alongside cut crystal clarity. Younger consumers track a company's gender pay gap before they scan its barcode, and luxury is increasingly defined not by marble showrooms, but by stories of ethical sourcing and regenerative agriculture. This is the landscape William and Katherine inherit, and against this backdrop the palace's decision to elevate them as grantors reads like a strategic down payment on the monarchy's next half-century. It acknowledges that the couple's generation is already steering the public's conversation around mental health, climate action, early childhood development, and community resilience, and it threads those priorities directly into the formal machinery of royal endorsement. In practice, the Wales household has begun mapping its supply touchpoints. Kensington receives everything from renewable energy consultancy for its roof panels to the organic flour used in the nursery kitchen, to the sustainable tweed worn by protection officers on chilly night patrols. Each supplier relationship now becomes eligible for warrant consideration, provided the service is consistent, outstanding, and verifiably ethical. The auditors are poring over safety certificates and social impact statements, reading through board minutes that document how a manufacturer treats warehouse staff in Warrington, or how a metalwork foundry offsets emissions in the Tees Valley. Insiders say the prince spent long evenings this spring immersed in binders compiled by the Royal Warrant Holders Association, discovering names that rarely make lifestyle headlines: a Bristol-based artisan who refurbishes Georgian sash windows using reclaimed sills rather than polymer replacements, a Suffolk dairy cooperative that guarantees livable wages and biodiversity corridors around every pasture, a microelectronics lab near Inverness, building low-wattage circuitry for heritage lighting. His response, according to a senior equerry, was palpable excitement. He wants the world to realize that a royal warrant can accelerate net zero and revive provincial craftsmanship at the same time. Katherine's influence is equally pronounced. She has insisted that parental workforce policies rank alongside supply chain transparency. If a company cannot offer meaningful apprenticeships or show evidence of paid family leave, its application will stall, no matter how exquisite its tailoring or how spotless its audit history. That shift echoes her decade of work on early years research and signals to boardrooms that social well-being matters as much as polished mahogany. Yet none of these philosophical turns diminish the brand impact that older warrant holders still enjoy. The Savile Row cutter, who armed Sir Winston with chalk stripes, and now tailors recycled wool for NASA engineers; the bootmaker in Northampton, whose footwear marched across the trenches and now strides into Milan fashion weeks; the small Kent orchard whose lavender honey sweetened Victorian tea trays and now appears in vegan patisserie across Los Angeles. All of them continue to ride a commercial updraft triggered by a simple phrase: by appointment. Their challenge now is to interpret sustainability in ways that keep pace with William and Katherine's vision. The financial implications are far from trivial. Data assembled by trade economists at the London School of Economics suggests that in the first 5 years after a warrant is awarded, the median firm sees export turnover rise by close to a quarter, and domestic orders by a solid tenth. That uplift often translates into staff expansion, apprenticeship schemes, laboratory innovation, and rural infrastructure upgrades, meaning the halo does not stop at the factory gate, it ripples outward into the town that hosts the factory, the pub opposite the gate, the bus route that ferries new trainees to the site each dawn. This is precisely why a Treasury task group now meets monthly with palace officials to ensure that new warrant holders can access growth capital quickly. The Chancellor is said to favor low-interest export loans specifically earmarked for warrant-backed firms, arguing that when the crest sits on the crate, customs officers in Sao Paulo and dock inspectors in Manila clear containers more swiftly, driving down friction costs for British exporters. None of this would matter if the consumer story on the street did not resonate, and here the Wales brand carries uncommon heft. They are digital natives of the Instagram age, comfortable releasing behind-the-scenes footage of school runs and village fetes alongside slick campaigns for Earthshot Prize finalists. When such accounts spotlight a warrant holder, a Wiltshire cheesemaker, for instance, or a Lancashire bicycle frame fabricator, the post can ignite orders overnight, not just in the UK but in Canada, India and the Gulf, where the monarchy's soft power enjoys particular cachet. The palace is acutely aware of the reputational stakes. Should any warrant holder stumble into scandal, the backlash would rebound straight onto Kensington's doorstep. That is why the vetting architecture is formidable. Teams examine environmental data, whistleblower records, litigation dockets, even director social media history. Senior aides speak of adopting a do no harm doctrine borrowed from humanitarian circles, meaning a single negligence verdict or greenwashing revelation can trigger immediate review. William reportedly signed off on that doctrine himself, stressing that a warrant must remain a Northern Star for integrity, not a lifetime label immune to accountability. For the king, the move also solves a constitutional logic puzzle. He has pledged a slimmed-down monarchy that supports fewer patronages, with greater depth, passing the warrant baton to the Wales household spreads the administrative load while drawing his son and daughter-in-law further into the institutional core. It symbolically widens the stage on which the next generation already performs. The contrast with the turbulent 90s, when the House of Windsor often seemed paralyzed by self-inflicted drama, is notable. A new model is quietly forming, one in which the Crown's commercial voice is modernized yet still rooted in the rituals that make tourists queue outside St. James's Gate. Beyond Britain, the decision arrives at a sensitive moment for Commonwealth realms debating their constitutional future. Polling indicates that youthful electorates in Jamaica, Barbados, Australia, and Canada respect environmental leadership and social welfare credentials as markers of moral relevance. The palace believes that aligning the warrant system with those values demonstrates adaptive legitimacy and could soften Republican headwinds over the medium term. Still, there is no guarantee of unanimous praise. Anti-monarchist campaigners have already questioned why any private business should profit from royal favor in an age of brand influencers and rigorous corporate certification bodies. They argue that Fairtrade Soil Association or B Corp badges deliver similar assurances without inherited privilege. Royal defenders fire back that these modern schemes owe much of their global recognition to Britain's centuries of standards diplomacy, ironically seeded by royal warrantry. The debate looks set to intensify as the first Wales warrants roll out. Inside the association, the atmosphere is one of measured anticipation. There is talk of staging a traveling exhibition, the craft of a warrant, where tailors, upholsterers, brewers, jewelers, and AI microchip engineers stand shoulder to shoulder under a single flag. The concept is deliberately eclectic, a message that the 21st century crown can promote heritage, tweed, and quantum circuitry with equal enthusiasm, because excellence knows neither class nor category. When that exhibition opens, perhaps in the vaulted nave of Westminster Hall, television crews will inevitably pan to the crest newly tweaked for Kensington. The cleverest producers will remember to linger on its motto, ICHDN, I serve the service. Now demanded is not merely to keep the royal household stocked with the finest soap or upholstery, it is to help the United Kingdom prove that prosperity can be forged without draining rivers or exploiting labor, to show that innovation and tradition can share a ledger, and that the oldest brand endorsement on earth can still teach consumer culture a thing or two about responsibility. William and Katherine have accepted that brief with characteristic understatement, no formal launch gala, no televised speech, just a quietly released statement from their private secretary, and the machinery of vetting whirring into gear behind the scenes. It is early evidence of how they will one day rule unspectacularly at first glance, but with strategic intent broad enough to nudge markets, and subtle enough to reinforce the mythic narrative that keeps an ancient institution not only alive but relevant. If it succeeds, the next generation will sip tea from warrant-bearing cups, ride e-bikes welded in warrant-bearing foundries, and click purchase on apps that display a tiny crest reinterpreted for a digitized world they may never know. The spreadsheets, the interviews, the solar panel installation data that sat behind each decision. Still they will feel the promise of quality that once prompted their ancestors to trust a London glove maker or a Scottish game butcher, and that enduring intangible is the monarchy's most reliable currency of all. ChatGPT.